Finally forced out. The former Prince, now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has officially left Royal Lodge and will live in a home on Sandringham Estate in Norfolk. It comes as his brother speaks out on the Epstein scandal.
After years of escalating pressure and mounting scandal, a moment no one expected arrives with shocking finality. In the middle of Monday night, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was removed from Royal Lodge, and the ripples are shaking the royal family to its core. Whispers of fury, humiliation, and long-buried consequences ignite fierce debate while sources and observers brace for impact. Palace insiders hint at reactions no public statement could have prepared for. Is this removal justice, institutional damage control, or calculated exile? What exactly happened that night? Who made the final call? And why does this moment feel like the end of everything Andrew fought to preserve?
We've got some breaking news that has just come through to the newsroom. The man formerly known as Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has now moved out of the Royal Lodge. This is a significant move. He is a resident of Norfolk now.
This is what happened when Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was finally forced out of Royal Lodge, leaving in the middle of Monday night to begin what many now describe as his final exile, as renewed Epstein material triggered fresh concern at the center of the monarchy. For more than 20 years, Royal Lodge functioned as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's base within the Windsor estate, held under a lease arrangement dating back to 2003 and 1 that later became the focus of intense scrutiny. ITV News reported that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor left Royal Lodge in the middle of Monday night with no announcement beforehand and no public statement afterwards. By the following morning, ITV said he was believed to be staying at a property on the Sandringham estate, while also stressing that this was not expected to be a permanent arrangement because his long-term accommodation was not yet ready. The absence of ceremony said more than any press release ever could.
Unprecedented, I think, Gabriella, because normally the King wouldn't address this issue directly. I mean, there's been moves behind the scene, obviously buoyed in by William and Catherine as well, to remove Andrew from his home.
The timing of that departure did not happen in isolation, and that is where the story sharpens. ITV directly linked the move to renewed attention around Jeffrey Epstein, reporting that another 3 million pages of documents had been released as part of the Epstein files, a volume large enough to drag the story back into headlines on both sides of the Atlantic. Among that material were photographs which ITV described as undated and released without context, adding clearly that they did not prove wrongdoing. That clarification is key to this story, but here is the problem. The scale of the document release alone was enough to reignite scrutiny the royal family has spent years trying to dampen.
Strip him of his titles, his princehood, really push him out of public sight. But the fact that he said that they will, or Buckingham Palace has issued a statement saying they will support police.
And that pressure arrived at a moment when Andrew's position had already been weakened beyond repair. None of this unfolded in a courtroom, but it unfolded very publicly. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has continued to deny any wrongdoing, and ITV reported his position directly, stating that he said he did not see, witness, or suspect the behavior that led to Epstein's arrest and conviction. Those denials, however, were no longer the deciding factor. What mattered was the effect on the institution. And this is where the story shifts from personal scandal to royal containment.
Breaking news out of the UK, Buckingham Palace has just released a statement over the allegations against the former Prince Andrew's links to Jeffrey Epstein. It says King Charles has made clear his profound concern at allegations which continue to come to light in respect of...
The move out of Royal Lodge had been set in motion months earlier, long before the Monday night departure made headlines. ITV reported that Buckingham Palace confirmed King Charles III had begun the formal process of stripping Andrew of his remaining titles, at which point he would be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. At the same time, notice was served for him to leave Royal Lodge, with plans already in place for him to relocate to accommodation on the Sandringham estate. Crucially, ITV also reported that this new arrangement would be privately funded by the King, a detail that speaks volumes about the desire to remove public funding from the situation altogether.
Charles, how long have you known about Andrew and Epstein?
That decision changed everything. Public scrutiny intensified further in December 2025 when ITV reported on evidence given by the Crown Estate to the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee. Royal Lodge, MPS were told, was in a dilapidated condition and required major repairs, an assessment that cast a harsh light on the long-running lease arrangement. Figures shown to, though, committee revealed that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor secured the lease for a significant sum, with millions later spent refurbishing the property.
The UK parliamentary inquiry has been launched into the royal family's property portfolio, with revelations that Royal Lodge, where the King's disgraced brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, resided, was dilapidated and in need of repair.
Then came the figure that caught attention: the compensation he could have claimed for giving up the lease early, but officials told MPs that because of the property's condition, he likely wouldn't receive any payment in practice. Royal Lodge had become a problem no one wanted to carry. By early 2026, the remaining question was no longer whether Andrew Mountbatten Windsor would leave Royal Lodge, but how quietly it could be done. And that is when the plan for his departure started unfolding.
Now, there was public outrage when it was revealed that Andrew was paying what's called a peppercorn rent, so ostensibly nothing, to live in a 30-room mansion.
ITV reported that he left Royal Lodge in the middle of the night on Monday and was believed to be staying at Sandringham, with the emphasis placed firmly on the temporary nature of that stay. Within hours, additional reporting began to fill in the gaps. People magazine confirmed that the immediate plan involved a temporary move to Wood Farm, followed by a later relocation to Marsh Farm once renovation work had been completed. Hello magazine supported that account and added further detail, reporting visible security upgrades at Marsh Farm, including fencing and CCTV, along with confirmation that the Sandringham no-fly zone had been extended to include the property.
Look, the Andrew allegations are incredibly damaging to the royal family. They are. But Keir Starmer, I suppose, he's really put in his place when you look at the pecking order of importance in the UK.
The pattern was clear. Privacy increased, access narrowed, and visibility dropped. Wood Farm itself carries its own quiet symbolism. People reported that it was the place where Prince Philip spent much of his retirement after stepping back from royal duties in 2017, remaining there until his death 2 years later. It was a setting associated with withdrawal from public life rather than prominence within it. Hello added a further layer, noting that Wood Farm had long been used informally by the family, including stays by Sarah Ferguson when Andrew's daughters joined the family at Sandringham for Christmas during their childhood. From Royal Lodge at Windsor to Wood Farm at Sandringham, the direction of travel could not be clearer.
Prince Andrew is facing increasing pressure to move out of the Royal Lodge at Windsor, with representatives of King Charles reportedly in talks over the disgraced royal's home.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button because I've got a special video coming tomorrow that you absolutely won't want to miss. As Andrew's relocation became public, the tone from other members of the royal family remained careful and restrained. People reported comments from Prince Edward, who said, "It's really important to remember the victims." His words avoided names and details, but the message was unmistakable, and it aligned with the wider repositioning already underway. The family line had shifted.
Are now reporting that Prince Andrew is in advanced talks with Buckingham Palace to give up his lease at Royal Lodge, a 30-room mansion.
It is equally important to be clear about what this moment does not represent. ITV stressed that the newly released Epstein photographs were undated, lacked context, and did not prove wrongdoing. No new legal findings were announced and no fresh charges were brought. This was not a legal judgment, it was an institutional decision. When you lay out the timeline, the pattern is striking. The lease was secured, millions poured into renovations, controversy grew, pressure mounted, action was taken, and finally came a quiet late-night departure.
A number of government MPs are also calling for Prince Andrew to be pulled in front of an inquiry into the financial arrangements of the lease.
Each step reduced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's space inside the royal family until there was almost none left. The behavior documented throughout this process fits into a larger pattern of institutional damage control that has defined the monarchy's response to Andrew's scandals. As the Epstein documents continued to emerge, more pressure built around the shocking reality that Andrew had remained at Royal Lodge for years, despite mounting evidence of his poor judgment. From refusing to cooperate fully with investigations to maintaining the lease on a dilapidated property while owing nearly $500,000 in compensation, Andrew's actions were often seen as manifestations of entitlement that the institution could no longer protect. For many observers, the midnight removal was the moment the monarchy finally acknowledged what critics had been saying for years, that Andrew's presence at Royal Lodge was untenable and that his position within the visible royal family had to end. The midnight departure itself carried unmistakable symbolism. No ceremony, no announcement, no dignified farewell, just a quiet removal under cover of darkness while the country slept. That choice of timing speaks to how far Andrew has fallen and how desperately the palace wanted to avoid any public spectacle that might draw further attention to a situation already spiraling beyond control.
Well, let's stay in the UK this morning because the bad headlines continue for Prince Andrew, who it's now claimed has hardly paid any rent on his royal lodge for 2 decades.
Years before this midnight removal, there were warning signs that Andrew's position at Royal Lodge would eventually become impossible to maintain. Those who followed the Epstein scandal closely immediately noticed the growing disconnect between Andrew's public denials and the mounting documentary evidence. These observations were more than just speculation. They now read like accurate predictions confirmed by the institution's decision to remove him. According to the timeline of events, Andrew's lease had become a liability, his presence at Windsor an embarrassment, and his continued occupation of his mansion increasingly difficult to justify as new Epstein materials continued to surface.
It just feels like the more we learn about Prince Andrew, the worse this gets for him.
Well, Pete, that's a very accurate summary of what is happening here in the UK.
Fast forward to February 2026, and the removal made clear just how completely Andrew's position had collapsed. The midnight departure brought the crisis to its inevitable conclusion, and the institutional response revealed a monarchy willing to exile one of its own rather than continue absorbing the reputational damage. But long before this removal occurred, Andrew had already displayed a pattern of resistance, entitlement, and refusal to accept the severity of his situation. When we examine the midnight removal alongside the wider context of his scandals, it becomes clear that this was not a sudden decision, but the culmination of years of institutional patience finally running out.
Andrew cannot seem to escape this nightmare that has continued to unfold, and now there's calls by members of the government and also members of the opposition that he should be forced to move out.
No announcement was needed. The exile has already begun. The pattern is unmistakable. Institutional containment replacing royal privilege, private funding replacing public support, and isolation replacing any remaining connection to the center of royal life. Sources close to the situation have suggested Andrew is furious about the manner of his removal, viewing the midnight departure as a humiliation designed to strip away any remaining dignity. But those same sources acknowledge that his fury changes nothing. The decision was made at the highest levels of the monarchy, and the removal was carried out with precision and finality.
So he's living in a pretty good situation for someone whose, private and public life has been completely destroyed.
So when you look at Andrew's midnight removal from Royal Lodge, the dilapidated property he left behind, and the exile to Wood Farm that now defines his future, do you see justice finally being served, or do you see an institution protecting itself at all costs? The timing was deliberate, the execution was swift, and the message was unmistakable. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's time at the center of royal life has ended, and it ended in the darkness of a Monday night with no fanfare, no ceremony, and no way back.